Okay, so I think we are good to go. I just need to double check to make sure that there's some kind of chat enabled. I apologize for any technical difficulties. I'm a live stream noob. There's some kind of chat enabled. I apologize for any technical difficulties. Okay, I haven't figured out how this scheduled live stream thing works, and then how I get the settings for the scheduled one to apply to the one right now. So I promise that I will totally get that working for the next time I do this, which will be part two. I'm just gonna try one more thing before I call it quits. I don't want to cancel. Okay. Oh, I found it. Found it. Maybe. Oh no, why? It won't let me actually check this box. So I will figure this out. Just so that you can see the madness that's happening. This is the screen that I found, and I should be able to just check enable live chat, but maybe I have to do this before I go live. Um, oh well. Well, I will definitely have this working next time. Don't you worry. Okay, so like I promised, I'm about to kick off my next chapter, and I guess if you haven't seen the text description, there's going to be a lot of spoilers. So if you haven't, or if you have read and you don't want to know what's happening, I would definitely come back and view this later when this has gone live. But this is episode 70. We're on episode 65 currently. I like to give myself a buffer of like 5 or 6 episodes. Unfortunately, I have a full-time job as well, so I work at this company called Unity Technologies as an engineer, and it's been kind of crazy lately. Our company went public last year, and so there's been a lot of changes, a lot of really cool kind of initiatives coming on, and it's been really hectic. So I kind of eaten into my buffer a little bit, and I'm trying to get caught up. So I want to talk a little bit about what I'm working off of. So I'll just bring this down here. I mentioned this in one of the behind the panels video, but what I like to do is just have a really short skeleton script that I throw up really fast so I can just start drawing things on the canvas, get it out there, because I really need to see things in order to start iterating, and I do a lot of iteration. So my skeleton script usually consists of, let me see, I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. Hopefully you can read this text. Okay, so it's gonna kind of seem funny because it's just a lot of shorthand, but I always bullet out the beats, plot beats, emotional beats that I definitely want to try to hit this particular chapter. So in this episode 70, it's concluded the whole mystery trial and contract of Ellie, who had summoned a demon in order to get revenge, or what she perceived to be revenge, on this defendant who had been involved in a murder case, and she summoned this like demon of vengeance to come and start killing off people who it thought was guilty, but not necessarily was truly guilty. And we discover that it's been kind of manipulating the definitions of the laws, and Simon has now access to those laws, so he's able to call this demon on its bullshit. And there's kind of an avatar that represents sort of this like elder god that is in charge of all of the occult laws and what is considered justice. And so at the very end of the last chapter, 69, he's able to prove that this demon has in fact breached its contract, and therefore Isaac can exact penalties from this demon, and he does so in a very brutal way. And so in this episode, I want to show that Simon is not quite comfortable with how Isaac has dispatched this demon. But we also see that Haley is not really concerned about the violence, because she was handling these demons in a pretty violent way on her own right. So they're kind of on the same wavelength. I don't think they're besties yet, but I think she finally sees a little bit of eye to eye with this kid. And because they've been successfully able to go from like beginning to end of this process, she now thinks that there's some future in this occult law practice partnership. However, I also want to show that Isaac's demon, who we revisited in his backstory, still lurking around the shop, still maybe a problem, but also an even bigger problem is going to be Haley's demon, who has now blown into town and is looking for not only its eye, but also to finish the curse that's been placed on Haley due to a contract made by the little singing eyeball that's sitting in the basement. Okay, so those are the beats. Those are the emotional beats and the plot beats that I need to hit. And then what I do is just sort of write out a quick summary, a little bit more detail of what's going to happen in the order in which it happens. And then if there's time, I'll start on some like joke, some placeholder dialogue, just so that I have kind of an understanding of how long it's going to be, and maybe I can figure out how many panels I want to do per conversation. But that's still going to be just very first pass, and will subject to change by the time that I'm done sketching out these thumbnails. Okay, so now that I have this plot roughly, okay, roughly sussed out, what I'm going to do is go into this template that I have, which is basically a really, really long file of the whole episode in one go. And you can see that it's like super long. And I will go in and just lay out preliminary panels on one layer, which I will then chop up. And I have this really cool plugin called Brushbox. It was actually created by a coworker of mine who does a lot of Photoshop plugins and sells a lot of artist tools. I think he still maintains it, but if you happen upon it, it's actually a really cool organizational tool that I use to just color code my brushes and put all the settings in one place, instead of just the standard Photoshop brush palette. But I'm going to just choose something that's akin to like a pencil, and I'm going to go through each one of these. Move this guy over here. Well, put him right here. Go through each one of the events that happen in the summary, and just gauge like, how much how much real estate that I want to give it in the overall chapter, as well as hints of some panels. So I have here this first line where it says Simon is looking at the demon guts as the void fades out around them. So I always like to have a nice, really long, scrolly panel least in one in every episode that sort of takes advantage of that vertical scrolling format. So I want to do something where we have kind of like a micro shot of the blood on the floor and the demon guts that are kind of scattered around, that Simon is looking at. And what I want to do is, in my mind, I'm envisioning there's like a hand here, or a claw. Okay, it's more like a claw. And then maybe we'll put some feathers on here because you haven't seen the demon's true form yet, but it looks kind of like a giant fat vulture. Okay, so it's kind of playing on this idea that it's this scavenger of like human emotions and guilt. So it's this like multiple beaked, multiple eyed buzzard. So we'll have like a little bit of feathers kind of lying on the ground, and of course I'll give it kind of the cool demon bloody treatment here. And then maybe like just one more body part for good measure. So we'll do what's something recognizable? We'll do maybe like part of its face here. So one of the challenges of working in this giant format is that sometimes you need to zoom in and out to see how much detail you're really putting in, because like the viewer is seeing it something along this lines. But if you go in too close, you don't really get to see how all of this blends in with the scene before it and the scene after it. So just as a good practice, you should definitely find some shortcut keys to let you zoom in and out really fast. And I have with me one of the touchscreen Cintiqs. So I have the ability to, like, I'm pinching my fingers just you would on a mobile device, so I can scroll in and out really fast. Before I had just a tablet, and so I mapped the zoom buttons to one of the keys on the side of the tablet. So definitely build that into your workflow, because for digital drawing or digital painting, it's something that you really have to get used to, this sort of infinite resolution, which you didn't have if you were doing a traditional analog comic, which is kind of what I used to do. So I did a lot of print forms. So I actually I have still a lot of equipment and ink supplies. I spent a ton of money on tones, a ton of money on pen nibs and brushes. I wish I could sell that right now, but I think a lot of people are moving to digital. Just easier. It's easier to experiment with because you're not worried about using up your supply, or messing up inks that look really good by trying to change some of the proportions. So there's a lot of freedom with working digitally. Okay, so what I want to do is it's kind of like, I always like to think of stuff in terms of camera movement and camera direction, just because I come from a cinematic background, storyboarding background. So I always like to imagine the camera is kind of panning through this floor, and it'll come onto like Simon's foot right here. And he always has really nice shoes. So I kind of like have a reference directory of just men's dress shoes of all qualities, because he's still a student, so he doesn't really have the $500 leather shoes, but they still have to kind of look. He has to look the part, so he can't come in there with like sneakers. So something like that. Okay, so we now have something to kind of segue into a close-up shot of his reaction. So remember, I want to hit the beat where he has to seem concerned about what has just happened, because a little bit more detail. Basically, because Simon was able to win the challenge, as a reward, he gets to decide what payment he can ask of the loser. And at first, he's like, he doesn't know what to do, so he leaves it up to Isaac to decide. And Isaac obviously is like, destroy this creature. And basically, the contract that you make transforms into the method of execution. And so it becomes basically a lash, this like cat o' nine tails, basically. And he completely shreds this demon to bits, which is why you see these pieces everywhere. So this doesn't really sit well with Simon because he's not a vigilante person. He's by the book kind of guy. So he does some questionable things here and there because he gets really passionate and excited, but at his core, he's still kind of like a lawful character. So vigilante justice does not sit well with him. So he needs to look sufficiently upset. And thank God for this guy's hair, because it's really easy to get his interior silhouette down fast because he has these swoopy hair things that are kind of recognizable to me at this point. So I can get his character on the page very quickly and mock up kind of the emotion fast and recognizable, because I'm going to come back to this and break this down and do pencils on top of this. And sometimes if it's a character that's new, I will go back to a panel to this thumbnail and be like, who the hell was this? And then I have to retrace the script. Okay, what I did to solve that was sometimes I'll just be like, this is dude, new dude, with defense team or something like that. All this to say, because Webtoons is on a weekly release schedule, you just have to work super fast. I think for me, for my comic, and I don't know if it's because they have a kind of minimum amount of panels for thrillers or like horror, supernatural, but I have to do a minimum of like 40 to 50 panels per week, which if I didn't have a full-time job, it wouldn't be terrible. But with the full-time job, I had to get a colorist assistant towards the middle of the second season, just because things were kicking my butt. Work was kicking my butt. And my buffer was just going downhill because I had about like 13 episode buffer, and it got eaten pretty quick. Okay, so he is looking concerned. I want to linger on this moment a little bit. So what kind of a cheat, maybe it's a cheat, but it's definitely a little bit of a shortcut to get the effect of a longer shot, but not reusing the same panels over and over again. What I'll end up doing is just doing like limited animation, where I take his exact facial expression here, and I will paste it over into this new panel, but I will change some bits of his expression to show kind of sequentially how his mood is changing. So maybe he he's staring and he can't look at this anymore, so he closes his eyes and he clenches his jaw because he's trying to settle this and resolve it mentally, since it happened and he can't go back because he needs to help other people. So he's gonna eat it. It's gonna be like, screw it. Sometimes you gotta make compromises in life. So he's like this. He's a little bit angry, but he swallows it. Kind of tucks it away in a little box. And then I do want to show where the rest of the team is in relationship to him. Plus, I have this line here in the script that says the void fades around them. So I want to show that they are now kind of merging back into the basement. I will probably add another panel in here to drag this turmoil out, because it's such like an inner battle. So I'll probably skip a little bit down, and then here I'll have so now I have to decide what kind of shot do I want. Do I want kind of bird's eye view, or do I want a worm's eye view? And this is where I usually go back to my old school camera techniques. So typically, if you want to show somebody is diminished or they're powerless, you do a bird's eye view or a down shot of the character. And then if you want to show like a position of power, you do an up shot. Typically, you can break those rules like any other artistic rule to give an interesting twist on things. For me, I want to have two things. I want to show that this is a moment of like Simon. He's not small. It doesn't feel small, but he's definitely not in a position of like, he's not celebratory. But I still have to show everyone else in the shot. So I'm gonna choose a down angle, and then maybe. Yeah, maybe because because we already know that he's in the shot, and we're going from him to others. Let's do the downward angle from like a back shot, because then we can show him with, this is a cool idea. We could show him with his shoulders up, so that we just saw his face, so we know he's upset. So if your shoulders are up and your back is clenched, you're kind of you're stressed, and we can do some really cool kind of hinting at with his body language, where maybe he has some clenched fists here, and we can do it. It's something that the audience can infer just by looking at him from this angle. But then as we go down, we'll show like the other characters here. So we'll have Haley next to him. And right now I'm just gonna place them really quickly, so I'm not gonna pose them, and I will go back here when I clean up and put them in more interesting positions or interesting poses, so they're not just like standing rigidly in the middle of this room. So I kind of save, unless I have a very distinct character direction in mind, I don't really get to that part of it until I get to pencils, unless it's a very action heavy thing. And then I definitely have to plan out action poses, because fight choreography is a lot. It takes a lot of planning. All right. We'll just fix up this perspective a little bit. Okay, and then definitely we've got Isaac here, and then he is totally not worried. He is actually pretty psyched. So usually has this kind of innocent pose where he puts his hands behind his back, and it's kind of like makes him look playful, but also, when kids do that or when adults do that, it's almost as if they want something because they're trying to act innocent, and then they ask you for a favor. So it's almost kind of like this um, mischievous type thing. So we'll just put him with his trademark hands behind his back, like he's trying to presume that he's just this harmless kid. Okay, and then last but not least, we have Ellie, who came along for the trial and who's sort of started this all. So she has her kind of end arc is definitely more morally ambiguous, because I don't think at the end of this she feels sorry at all. She feels sorry, definitely, for causing the death of like the defense attorney, Dr. Kapoor, and certainly her neighbor. But I really don't think that she has lost too much sleep over the unfortunate murder of the defendant, even though you know, mental the way that we administer services and justice for people who suffer from mental illness is definitely not fair in this world. So I definitely wanted it to come across that him not going to prison was the right thing to do, but he should not have been let out, because as I mentioned in another stream or another behind the panels, he doesn't go free. He's not scot-free because you are found not guilty by reason and insanity. You actually will go to a secure, maximum security hospital for the rest of your life. And the reason why he was released early, I was trying to hint that there were, some occult, demonic influences behind that. So he was a victim as well. But I don't think Ellie sees it that way. I think she's just like, he got what he deserved. Maybe he didn't deserve to be murdered like that, but she definitely doesn't feel as bad about it as she does about the others. But she does still feel tremendous guilt for not having helped her neighbor. And even though she thought it was an accident, she still didn't do anything. So she still feels guilty. So we'll have her. Ooh, let's kind of pull her down so she's isolated from the rest of the group, because there's a moment later where Simon approaches her and they kind of reconcile. So we'll have her stand a little bit away from them. Okay, I do, just for the sake of making sure the environment is set, and it's clear that the void has disappeared and they're back in the basement where they started, I do want another shot of the scene disappearing. So maybe what I'll start doing is having the terrain here be the terrain of like the demonic world, or this plane. It's kind of like Cthulhu-ish, so it's not really traditional demons and angels and stuff like that. It's more like interdimensional monsters. So this interdimensional plane where the trials take place has this sort of like cracked earth, dry, deserty landscape. So what I'll have is, as they get down to Ellie, we'll show that that's starting to kind of melt away. And another kind of blend or segue into the next shot. So we'll have it on the edges here, on the periphery. Oh man, I wish I could figure out how to get the chat enabled. I promise you guys, I will figure that out for part 2. because I would love to hear what people have to say, or if there's any questions. Maybe you guys have your own comics that you want to start on, or you have a comic and you want to know more about camera angles or storyboarding techniques and stuff like that. But I'll figure it out. Okay. Maybe I don't want a traditional cut, like a panel edge here. So I'll do some fancy stuff where it's going to the basement, and it'll do a soft blend where we'll do a reverse shot now. I know the reverse shot may be a little bit jarring because it's breaking the 180 rule, but I'll thumbnail it out that way, and then I'll do some tests on my phone. I'll put this on my device, see how it flows together, and then I may change it from like a reverse shot. So we have Simon here, and remember he was in the lead, and he's looking down at like the gore on the floor. So here we'll do more of a little bit of an upshot so that we can see the whole room and the ceiling of the room. Okay, this is going to be really rough. Okay, so we'll have him here. And then we know, and this is where I have to zoom in, because when I'm doing full body shots, if I don't zoom in, I really can't get the scale of people and of the shot composition right, and it'll be too much of a tight shot. So in order for me to like really get a sense of space, of just getting them to feel small in the space, this is where I have to zoom in, and then I kind of start transforming the character's scale to fit in the background the way that I want. And at this point, because the way that they sit in the environment is so important at this moment, I may just draw out the environment first. But actually, I'll show you guys something that I do which speeds this process up even more. So I will go into my library of environments that I have built up over the 2 seasons. And these are painted environments or paint overs that I've done of different places and sets throughout the comic. And you can kind of see I've got like the shop, I've got different time of day for the shop. This was Haley's storage unit when she still had it before it got completely wrecked by that other demon. I have Bill's place, and then the void. So what I'm going to do is grab, I know I have the basement as well. It's up top here for basement. So to save myself time, I know I have an upshot that would work. And I may just place it in there. Oh, here we go. Just to... Perfect. Just to give me a good set to work off of. And what I'll do is throw this in here. I'll rasterize it and lower the opacity a bit. So now I can get a sense of scale. Okay, and how these characters are going to sit in the 3-dimensional environment. Okay, so plus, when I actually go to the inking and the paintings phase, background's already done. Okay, but it took a long time to build up this library. Okay, so there's Simon. He kind of looks off model here because he looks more like this frumpy guy. But anyway, I'll fix that up. So he's here. I want him. We already know what's in front of him, so let's just play with his scale and see. We'll put him here. I think I like that a little better. So here, we knew Haley was kind of the next in line, so she's about here. She's got her, okay, her hoodie, jumpsuit. And I think I want her to start approaching Simon. So she has her hand out here. There we go. And at this point, we don't know how he's going to react with any of the other people. We kind of already know his inner monologue. And I'm debating on whether I'll have him do, like have any thought bubbles out there. Oh, I like the cocked head because, so I don't know if you guys know my background, but I've been in animation for a long time in the game industry. So I've done a lot of like in-game cutscenes, and I've taken a lot of animation courses and taught a lot of animation courses in the past. But this sort of like head tilt, and then if you are looking at it from a profile view, whenever the character does when you can see the chin down, or like the character, it's kind of like this, where the character's neck is down and the head is up. It's called like the plea. And it looks like the Hunchback of Notre Dame here, but basically, the way that the character would animate is that they would come down and then up with the head, like their head and chest would come up and down, or come down and up. And if you watch any animation, 3D animation, even live actors will do this when they're talking and they want to ask a character for a favor, or they're pleading with a character. They will do that motion where the head, it like comes down like this, comes down and then comes up, and then the chest follows. That's called the plea. And so when characters do that, they always look like they're more sympathetic, or they're trying to be sympathetic to the character that they're talking to. So I really love when you have that kind of bend in the spine and the neck and the head. It gives a little bit of variety. It also does a little bit, gives more body language and shows instead of tells what the character's emotional state is. Okay, so she's there, and she's slowly approaching Simon. So we'll have her kind of tiptoe. And then Isaac, of course, he's just in the back here, looking excellent, or feeling excellent. And I think he doesn't know how Simon's going to react, so he's just hanging back. And then maybe he's kind of doing the stork pose with his hands back, because he's putting on the cutesy act again. And then of course Ellie in the back here, all by the stairs. And she has a tendency to keep her body closed in, so she always sort of kind of wraps, folds in her arms and hugs her elbows. So we'll have her do that pose. There's an exercise that one of my old animation teachers used to have us do all the time, and they were like, if you were on the street and you were looking at your friend from behind at a distance, like what your friend's body language is, how they walk, their gestures. So it was an exercise where you kind of like think of all your friends, maybe list out a few of them, and then really break down and analyze what about their pose makes them who they are. All right. It was always really hard because it's stuff that you don't think about, but it's so natural because you could be like, oh, you're in the mall when we could go into malls way back when, and you're trying to find your friend because they're supposed to meet you somewhere, and they keep saying, oh, I'm by the Pinkberry, and there's like a huge line of people at the Pinkberry, and you can only see their backs, and you're like, oh, that's my friend right there. Or just recently, I've been going to, there's this track nearby my apartment, and I have an old coworker who likes to do a lot of like boxing. And so I just kind of got into boxing. I did taekwondo for a while, for many, many years, like starting in like junior high school. And taekwondo doesn't have a lot of upper body stuff. So I wanted to incorporate boxing in my workout. And so I would go meet him at the track, and I didn't want to go across the track if I didn't see him there, because then I could just go back on the bus and go to bed because this is early in the morning. But I would have to look from a distance to see if I could recognize him amongst all the other people on the track. And he definitely has, one, a body type, and two, the way that he carries equipment, the way that he jumps rope, even the way that he walks is very unique. And so, unfortunately, he's there every time. So I can pick him out of the crowd every single Saturday morning, and so I have to make my way across the field. But if you ever get a chance to, it's kind of a fun exercise to do with yourself, with your friends. All right, so he's there, but the other purpose of this, other than showing Haley approaching, is to show kind of the void melting away or deteriorating, and in its place, we're back in the basement where this all started. Placeholder, deterioration effects, blah blah blah. On the floor, on the walls here. There we go. Can't forget this wall. Okay. So what else do we got going here? So Haley embraces Simon. Don't want to do that. Yeah, let's do it. Okay. And then this is a good time to cut to another camera angle that really shows the progression or the sequence. So whenever there's a sequence where a character has to come up from behind, or something is coming up from behind them, this is always a good cue to cut to a side shot or a profile shot of them. And usually I'll pick like a mid shot, because then you can get part of their body language, but then I don't need the extraneous lower legs or ground. And then you can still clearly see the characters' facial expressions to see how they react. So we'll have Simon here. And the other thing is, this is, there's a term for it, where you leave space, like this negative space here, for a character coming in. And this is also another rule that is good for breaking, because especially for people who watch a lot of movies, there's the idea of this rule of thirds, where you kind of put your character, if you were to chop up your panel into this grid, you would put your character kind of on the points where these grids intersect, and that's your beauty shot. And normally you would have the character facing the opposite way, so this way. Right now Simon's facing that way because you when you leave that empty space in front of the character, it has that feeling of like peace and resolution and safety. It's kind of like where, you know, dogs like to have some type of kind of wall when they sleep, or they like to sleep up against something because they feel safe. Cats kind of do something similar. So generally, we want to always have a character with space in front of them as opposed to behind them, because we're trained to know that something's going to fill that space. And if it's a horror comic, usually it's going to be filled with something pretty gnarly. So if we want to show a sense of dread or uneasiness, you would have the character with all that space behind them. But in this case, we know it's Haley coming up behind him, so it's not a big issue, and it's more kind of like a motivated type character direction, or a motivated camera shot, because we have this shot one, and then shot two will be the same kind of placement of Simon here, but now we'll have Haley come into the shot behind him, and then we may pull in a little bit closer here. Just so that it doesn't seem like exactly the same shot. So it's like a slight truck in, and that's actually a really subtle effect that you can do very cheaply. It's actually when you're doing very dramatic scenes or very emotional scenes, you don't want to have the camera moving around a lot, and you don't want the camera necessarily to be like completely still at times, because it feels very unnatural. So if you want a character, if you don't want it to be too distracting in the stillness, you can do this sort of slight truck in of the camera, but keep the horizon line the same, so it doesn't necessarily feel like there's movement or the characters are moving, but you still get a little bit of life in the shot. Okay, and then we'll just have, we could have Haley. I don't know if I want her to be so affectionate. I'll have to think about this. Hey, she definitely grabs his hand. I'll really have to think about, like, what is their form of affection? Like, what kind of contact makes sense for them? Because I don't think they're in that romantic space yet. But I definitely want it to show that they are much closer now, that they've experienced this horror together and they've come out successfully at the other end. And there was a lot of risk involved in this, which when the chapters just before this air, it'll be a little bit more apparent of, you know, like exactly what went into pulling this whole thing off. So they're kind of like soldiers, brothers in arms, or persons in arms. So maybe she grabs his hand here, or maybe she puts a hand on his shoulder. I don't know. That's tough. I'll have to make a call. But she definitely needs to be a little bit bigger in the shot. She looks like she's further away. Okay, I don't know. All right, we'll definitely have hand on shoulder. Okay. Yeah, yeah. And then I don't. Another thing about choosing not just the shot, but sort of like how much space you want to take up. And when I was originally drawing this comic, I had almost every panel be completely full width of the canvas. And the editor that I had at the time was like, and rightfully so, had said that you needed to vary up the panels so that when it was full screen, it felt special versus like everything is full screen, and then it just feels kind of more sort of monotonous. So what I may do is, and there's no need for this next shot to be full screen because I just want him to look back at her and then she'll say something to him. So we'll have his hair, glasses, and then maybe, oh, this will be a nice time to have a progression of his expression again. I'm trying to do a lot more slowing down of action because I realize that I am super cheap and I try to have one panel sum everything up at once. But what I've noticed is that people scroll through these things so fast that there's a lot of things that get missed, and people don't linger too long on any one shot. So trying to jam pack a lot of visual information into one panel has gotten me into trouble before, where I thought it was very clear that the setting or a particular plot point was shown, but it wasn't emphasized because you had to sit on the panel and like really look at the stuff in the background. And in my mind, I imagine people would go back and like study each panel and be like, oh, there's something glowing in the back there. But that's not what was happening. So now I'm trying to train myself to pull all that information out into multiple panels to slow the reader's gaze down and to really stress certain pieces of information. So for instance, but I also, you guys are intelligent, so I don't want to spell everything out for you, and I think that can be insulting a lot of times where, I've mentioned this before, where character's feeling sad, and the character has to say, I'm sad today because in order to sort of condescend on the audience, and I think that's unnecessary. So how this relates to this is that like I want to show that he's gonna put on a face for her. He's worried about what's happened, so maybe he looks concerned here, and then she's behind him here. And I like this because it can, from this perspective, it looks like they're closer and like physically as well as mentally closer. Okay, Haley's got she's got a little short chin, and then her face is a little fuller. I gave her a like pretty prominent forehead because I was like looking at some of my my friend has similar features, but I think I overdid it in season 1, so I'm pulling her hairline forward a little bit more, but she definitely has her little buns, and she's got like doe eyes. So I've tried to make her eyes more kind of like rounder and more open, and then she's got these lashes. So you definitely, when you want the character not to look like they're bugging out and they're excited, the pupils have to touch the top of the lid. Otherwise, they look crazy. There's other exceptions. I call it the Disney stare into space, where the character will kind of like look at nothing in particular and their eyes will be completely centered. So for instance, it will be like this, and it's meant to show that the character is thinking. And then sometimes like the eyes, the pupils will dart back and forth to show thought. All right, maybe it's a little too, these are too big. So they'll be a little bit up. And then there's kind of a rule of thumb with facial expressions where they say if a character, let me see if I can get this right. If a character is thinking of the past, they will look down, I think. Oh no. It's if the character's thinking of a memory, they'll look up. And if a character is thinking of something new information, they'll look down. And so that's kind of how some people who make a living of trying to profile people or gauge whether they're truthful or not will use that to see if they're lying, because if they're making up or fabricating something completely new, they'll kind of tilt their head down and look down as they're answering questions. And it's not always the case, but that's kind of like one of those micro expressions that people use to sort of interrogate. There was this show, it was a long time ago. I think it was like 10 years ago on television. It had the actor Tim Roth in it, and I think it was called Lie to Me. But it was great for animators because the whole show was about how to break down micro expressions to tell if somebody is lying, or to tell kind of like Sherlock Holmes type stuff. I don't think it did really well, but it was super interesting for animation purposes. But anyway, back to this panel. So she's happy, but she's not sure how Simon's going to react. So what I think I want to do is have this, basically it's kind of like a reverse over the shoulder shot. And Mary, she has her hand on his shoulder here. But what I was saying before about showing information instead of just having the character say something. So what I could do is have, again, sort of this panel in sequence, and then have him change his expression here to something happy. And he'll look up because he's like remembering something or processing the information that she's saying. And basically she's telling him that, you know, they have a working solution here. They have a business, and this means this is tremendous because now they can go after a lot of other demons, and he has access to the laws. So the more he studies them, the more they're going to be able to kind of put these demons out of commission. So she's happy, and it makes him happy. So we'll have an expression change here. Also, I kind of make up dialogue in my head as I start drawing these panels out. And I've tried to get better at predicting this while I'm writing out the script, but it doesn't happen. I'm definitely a visual storyboard person, so I have to start storyboarding this out and building the story at the same time, or building the dialogue at the same time, to have it all come together. Okay, so not quite a full smile. Maybe he cocks a smile. It's like half smile. And then eyebrows still up because still want to show him a little bit uncertain. Okay, there we go. And then... Okay, and then that's a perfect time for him to turn around. So I really love having showing characters' reactions and having their inner sort of turmoil play out on their face while they're listening to another character. To me, that's so very compelling. So like blah blah blah, here, and then yeah, she cocks her head the other way, so she's like coming around the bend so that she can try to get more of his attention. And it's kind of like, hey, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Okay, and then at this point, he's gonna fully turn around here. And he's going to, okay, he's going to share in the celebration. Okay, and this point we'll do a reverse shot, a reverse over the shoulder, where this is her back, the back of her head, and then he's going to say something to the effect of, "You're right, this is amazing. We have a lot of work to do, because remember, her demon is still on the loose, and this whole thing started because he wanted to help her. So now, she was able to get him out of his inner turmoil. I think he tends to be a drama queen, so he was spiraling down into a continuous pit of self-doubt again." Simon has, it's weird. He appears very confident on the outside, but I think he has this like super deep well of doubt, self-confidence, self-esteem issues, but he overcompensates with like kind of showmanship and performance, which is why he always tries to poke at demons and get them to act out emotionally to hide the fact that he can be kind of emotional. Anyway, so that's the psychology in my head. It's my thought canon. All right, she is. How do I? Let's see. I'll think about like what her final pose is going to be, but I don't want her arms closed in. It's going to be open pose, but he's going to turn around here. It's a little bit closer, somewhere like that size. And like I said, he's going to come around, bounce back, and be like, "Hey, you were right. This is huge." Now it's time for that marketing, that branding that we talked about. Okay, so now I have this line here that says they're all triumphant. And what I was thinking is, I forgot. So there's a line in one of the chapters before this where he says he's wearing his lucky T-shirt. As we all know, Simon's got some pretty smart, sassy, T-shirts. I think this might be a good time for him to show show what his T-shirt is. I usually don't do gags during the comic because it's just it's not. There's never a good opportunity to have that type of mood, but sometimes I try to throw that in to give some contrast. So maybe they'll be not quite going as far as sort of like a super deformed version of him, but he'll. Oh yeah, it would be hilarious if there's like a small little panel here, like an inset maybe, where he's like, remember I told you that part of it was gonna be because of my lucky T-shirt collection, and then he has like that sort of smirky, kind of smug grin that he has, and then here he'll like, I'm not sure how this will physically play out because he has to kind of unbutton his dress shirt and his tie to show what the T-shirt says. Um, but he's definitely gonna at least mention the lucky T-shirt. So here he'll be like, hey, I told you that we had luck on our side. So many triangles in suits. Suits, ties, collars. There's just a bunch of intersecting triangles. Even the folds. Alright. So he could. Oh, I guess he could have his hand on his tie here. And be like, guess what? I always have to clean up this area where the collar and the suit wrap around the neck. There we go. It's just like some layers here. Alright, I will certainly clean this up when I get to pencils. Okay, so we'll to TBD on whether he actually shows the shirt, but it would be cool if he did. And I'll probably, let me just like leave a space here for that to resolve. But what comes next is he has to talk to Ellie, and he's going to give her a stack of his amazing business cards so that she can hand them out to other people who may also have need of legal representation. So we'll let this gag play out. I have no idea how long it's going to, or how many panels it'll take. So we'll just estimate about right there. And then I want to just kind of cut to him coming up to her. So what I might do is just have, I think usually a good sheep's sort of hard cut, or a way to soften it is to have the character saying something here off screen. So imagine Haley just saw Simon's shirt and she's like, "You're a dork." So a good way to soften it is to have the character who's a little bit further away kind of listening to it or reacting to this line kind of in the distance. So maybe she's okay. She's by the stairs, so maybe she's making as if she's gonna go because she doesn't quite know how to thank him. They had a rough start, as you guys remember. And then her face is more like a shield, so she's got like a Pocahontas kind of like high cheekbone thing, and she has like kind of fairly thick eyebrows, and then she doesn't have doe eyes, but she has these like cat eyes. Her eyes are very similar to Shannon's. So maybe she feels a little uncomfortable because she's not, it's not kind of a reason for her to be celebrating like they are. So maybe she's back here. She's got her leather jacket, and she's gonna make a way up the stairs. So it could be that like we have the stairs in the background here, um, and it could be she's like about to turn to the stairs. So I've done a lot of these panels in sequence where it's the character and then the same shot with the character doing some movement in the shot. So instead of doing that, maybe I'll do an inset where there's this panel here, and then I'll cut to a wider shot so we've pulled out a little bit so we can see the stairs. Yeah, let's do that. We'll see the stairs here, and there's some junk underneath them. I think there's like a grandfather clock, or a little mini grandfather clock, and some chests, drawers, and then I think there's a old television set there. There's this really old dial-based television sets. Okay, so we will pull out just a little bit, and we'll show her like getting ready to turn because she's gonna make an exit. Like that. Although, I don't know, I feel like that may seem ungrateful. That she didn't even attempt to thank them. I'll have to think about that. But whatever she does before this could be that, and ultimately she decides that she's better off just kind of leaving. So, okay, maybe here. Have her start turning for the stairs. And then again, she does the like cradling of her elbows. And mess that up. Something like that. All right. The point is that she's gonna be turning, but then before she goes, I'm gonna have Simon approach her so that he can give her a stack of his business cards. Oh yeah. So this would be a good time to do a close up of her completely turned. Stairs. Yeah, stairs right here. So her head is turned. There we go. Collar. Boop, 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 boop. I also make noises when I draw, so I'm not crazy. Keeps me in the moment. Okay, so she's gonna turn, but at this point, this is where Simon is like, wait. Maybe not exclamation. It's like wait dot dot dot, because it's not like wait. Okay, so then we don't need to beat around the bush here. Let's do a full panel here because this is kind of an emotional moment. So we'll do full panel, and then Simon. Oh yeah. Let's. Ooh, this will be a nice time. And I think this is another moment to see what we have in our environment library. What I'm looking for is a shot of the railing in the foreground of the stairs, and in the background the rest of the basement. I may not have it. I may have to render another one, or a new unique camera angle. I don't have one. Okay, so this, yeah, I don't have one. I think this is a good opportunity to go through that process as well, because I do like to have unique shots, and I don't want to keep reusing the same environments all the time, all the time. So what I'm looking for is something like a railing in the foreground here, steps. Like that. And then in the background here, we get the rest of the basement. So here's some of the woodwork here. Perspectives. There we go. More like that, I think. So what I'll do is I will thumbnail out kind of a guesstimate of the angle, the sort of focal length of the shot, whether it's like flattened perspective, or it's more of like a fisheye lens. I'll work that out in the thumbnail a little bit, and then what I'll do is I use 3ds Max for this, just because the plugin that I have that renders line art from a 3D object came with Max, but I'll sometimes also use Autodesk Maya. But I will find this scene that I have, which is basically this entire basement. On another episode, I'll show you guys what the scene looks like. But I'll try to match this shot exactly. And what I'll do sometimes is I'll like take a cropped image of this environment, and I will put it on a plane in the 3D scene, and that way I can almost line it up perfectly. Then I will render out the shot, bring it back into Photoshop, and then I will paint over that shot in here. And actually, I want to talk about something that I've seen a lot in comics, on other webtoon comics, where the artist will take images of famous actors or actresses. I don't want to call out any particular comics, but I come from, again, a sort of entertainment background, so games, television, film, and that's done all the time. I think when I first discovered it, and some of my friends who are also in that world, particularly in concept art, when they discovered that was something that concept artists do and previs artists do in the industry, they felt betrayed because they honestly thought those things were drawn by hand all the time. But look, there's no time to do that. You're in a production setting. It's ridiculous to ask somebody to draw something over and over again by hand, and it's not like something they have to prove. These are great, amazing artists. They know their perspective, they know their lighting. They just need to get that done faster so they can get on to the important stuff, which is the design aspect. So in some instances, when an artist uses a photo or 3D render or they use a likeness of an existing person out in the real world, as long as they're not like ripping off that person's likeness to the point where it's like, if it's trademark infringement, you got to do what you got to do and to tell your story effectively. Now, if it is distracting the audience, where all they can see is, I mean, if you're ripping off, I don't know, who's a really noticeable face, who's like a recognizable actor that you're just like, that's that guy. Now I can't think of something. Damn it. There's like a million people flashing in my head. But basically, if you see that actor and that's all you can see, and the story is in the background because of it, that's probably a bad move on the part of the storyteller. But if you are using like a background image that you're compositing together, and as long as you give proper credit to whoever, if you're using a photograph, or if you paid for the license to use that stock footage in your art, you should go ahead and do it. It's perfectly fine to do that. It's not a cheat. You're not a lesser artist. There's something else I remember a really long time ago, and I actually, and I don't mean to get on a little bit of a tirade here because I want to get back to this, but it's just something that I'm like really passionate about, and I always like to defend artists and creators because it's a tough job. But I remember there was a comic artist who had a black and white comic, and there was this one panel where it was just a table with some goblets in the back, and the artist had put about a dozen goblets in a row on the table, and you could tell that they just, copied and pasted that one object over and over again. And I kid you not, there was a reader who commented on how the artist cheated, and they should really think about not copying and pasting this same prop over and over again because it looks terrible. And this was something that was in the background on a table, and the characters were basically covering up most of this prop. And it spawned this like huge flame war in this comics discussion thread. And I was like, I cannot believe that this is even an argument. And I'm pretty sure the person who brought it up in the first place is not an artist, does not have a webcomic, and probably, I don't know, just had a bad day and they needed to pick on something. But to me, it's so frustrating and unfair when you call out artists for doing that, and then to call them a lesser artist because they do it. So that is all I'll say on that, and I will get back to this panel here. So anyway, I got the basement, and there's the back wall here, and I know there's some shelving, and there's I don't know how he got the grand piano down here, but there's a grand piano, and then there's that workbench that Haley uses off to the side here, and then there's some like hanging fluorescent lights. Okay, I have a higher appreciation of the foundational architectural pieces of anything, of structures now, because I've been playing Valheim with my coworkers, and I just built my like very first longhouse with a second floor and like a pretty neat porch, and I made a bridge. But it took me 5 tries where I had to tear down my house because I didn't lay down the foundations correctly. So I definitely got a good appreciation, understanding of how much calculations are needed to make a house. All right. So Simon, all of this drawing here just to have, okay, her, Ellie, turn around. I haven't decided whether she'll be fully turned or she'll kind of like be somewhat facing us and starting to turn. I'll play with that. I always, whenever I go to my pencil phase, I will, whatever I draw here in the thumbnail, I'll do 2 takes of it to see which one works best. It takes a lot longer to get the panels done, but for me personally, I feel more comfortable that I've tried everything first before I start inking. So I will do several versions of the character's pose before I start inking it out in kind of the finished version. All right, but she's kind of turning, and then I'll have actually move the piano over here, but Simon will be here approaching her. And sometimes you'll notice when I'm trying to get something committed to paper really fast, the character will just sort of devolve into a bunch of sketchy lines. But I'll always get his little swirled hair in there. Okay, something along those lines. I think he's too short at the moment, so I may have to bump him up like that, and then change her perspective. So another thing is, like, if you really want to push the fact that the character's in the foreground, you need to exaggerate that a lot. Otherwise, they're going to be too close to each other, so it'll look like he's way too short. So if you really want to sell the fact that she's further ahead, she's layered closer to the camera, then you really have to pump up her scale. All right, so this is where I'll see if I want to put another panel in here to have Simon say something smart alecky, but ultimately the goal is that he is going to give her a stack of his business cards. So I definitely, for certain, for realsies, want a shot of him handing off those terrible business cards to her. And they would not be in that orientation. So, actually, sorry, I'm using my hand here to grab. Okay. I have like a stack of Post-its, so I'm just using my hand to figure out how I would grab a stack of business cards. Okay, so he would kind of do this. Grip him this way. Like a stack of cards. And then we definitely have to have the writing and the terrible typo there. Okay, and then we'll have a little bit, maybe the tops of some of her fingers making ready to grab it. And I do want this to mirror that shot from one of the scenes, one of the episodes where he made that promise to her about making sure the demon would never harm another innocent victim again. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, we shouldn't make promises you can't keep. So I wanted to give it to him this round because the guy's just, he's had a hard time and he's tried really hard. So I wanted, just in this instance, I wanted him to actually come through and fulfill his promise. So he's gonna have, well, again, another full screen shot, because it'll be, again, an emotional beat where it'll mirror that shot. And actually, let me pull it up, where he first initially handed her his business cards. And I think it's this one. So it's this end part here. So I may even, you know what? I may even just take this shot here. Let me flatten this. Copy and pasta here. Oop. Just as a reference, so it's not going to be exact. But that way it'll just remind me when I go back and do pencils that I want it to, again, mirror this shot here, where we are now reminded that he did in fact keep his promise. Oh. Alright, let's see, what do we have next? So, gives her a stack of cards, tells her to spread the word. Alright, we'll have another panel that's more or less the farewell panel, and I'll think about how I want that to go. But maybe it'll be a series of this, because if you take a look at the summary, it goes from Simon giving her the cards, telling her to spread the word, to Isaac making tea, and basically he's going to take Ellie's contract and put it away into his basement vault, is kind of, to add to his collection, his trophies. And then that's when he sees his demon lurking outside, because it's still trying to get into the shop, but it can't because it's too weak, and Isaac has the shop warded. So maybe before, when he was at full capacity, before Simon got rid of one of his eyes, he might be able to get inside, because he is still, technically, Isaac still has a contract with him. It hasn't been clear yet what type of bond a kind of human minion has with their demon master, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can control their thoughts entirely or control their actions entirely. So that's why he's not able to just make Isaac let him in. But what I want to do is transition from this sort of feel-goody, melancholy farewell to this kind of celebration. Let me think about this. So I want to have Isaac do two things. So he's going to have snacks, punch and pie ready, but he also is going to take the contract, which is actually now dead, and put it away for safekeeping. So we'll have a series of little panels here just to show passage of time. I don't know how many yet, but we'll just go ... And then let me think for a minute how I want this action to play out. Oh, I know. I guess I could have, as part of one of these small little panels, instead of a character shot, it'll just be a shot of the Oh, they're back. Oh, I know. They're back in that sort of little back room where their thinking chair is, and it's got two doors. So the one that's leading down to the basement, and there's the other door that's leading up into his crawl space. So let's cut to. Ooh, actually, let's just cut to the thinking chair. And maybe it's no longer the thinking chair. Maybe it's like the party chair. So we'll call it the party chair. There we go. Um, okay, that'll be good because it'll be a change of venue, which will definitely have a mood change as well. So now we're getting into the kind of the launch party, the launch of actual Simon Incorporated or Simon LLC or something. Okay, party chair. Okay, and then who do we have in the party chair? Okay, I also want this to play off as kind of like a dialogueless montage of just Simon and Haley relaxing and kicking back and just having a brief moment of triumph and carefree celebrations. So, okay, who gets to be in the party chair? Man, I can't decide because I think they both deserve it. I think both Haley and Simon, and Isaac, but we can't have Isaac since he's going to slink off somewhere. Um, let's put Haley in the party chair. How would Haley sit in the party chair? Oh well, she definitely when she sits in her work chair or when she's doing a lot of studying and experimenting and thinking, she always crawls into this like little knee up on the cushion. Oh, and then this is this is the perfect opportunity for Simon to do a wardrobe change. So now we can see his stupid T-shirt. Perfect, perfect. It all works out. So she'll be up here, and then she's not. Okay, she's not looking down. She's actually looking up at someone, and that someone is Simon. So he's off screen right, off screen, and she's talking to him, and then ooh, actually they're they're literally gonna be eating punch and pie because I think it would be funny to actually have that there since Isaac did mention it. So let's just have another sort of shot of the environment, and then next to the thinking chair here, maybe we'll have a little tray of like desserts and tea, since tea and honey, because that's Isaac's thing. So I don't know who made this. Probably got this delivered, but there'll be pie here. So there'll be like that's Isaac's piece of pie right there, and then he's got some fork here. He hasn't touched it yet because he's gonna go put the dead contract away. Okay, so there's pie, and then there'll be a little honey thing that Simon had to open, and there'll be another plate because like Haley put her pie over here. All right, so some type of establishing pie platter, dessert platter. Okay. Do do do. All right. So then Haley is having a good time here, and she has her tea cup and saucer. And just as a spoiler, this teacup or the tea that Isaac gives them is going to be important later. So he keeps feeding them tea and they keep drinking it, but that might not be a good thing. Whoop, what happened? There we go. Okay, so then we can have a shot here of Simon because we'll cut to him talking. There's always a question about whether you should split up these things into two shots versus one shot. So, having Haley in the thinking chair looking up, and then having a separate shot of Simon looking down, as opposed to just having one big shot with them together. And it's kind of the same thing with movies where you could have a shot of everyone together and just have the camera wide and have a giant party going on, or you could kind of cut to smaller, more intimate shots of individual people doing their thing. And for me, because this is kind of like a montage, I want each of the characters in their own panel, and then once that's done, we can do a shot that's a little bit wider. But that's kind of just sort of rough guidelines of what I do or how I choose between doing one giant shot and then or splitting it up. Another reason is more practical. You want to have the audience again spend more time in this space or in this sequence, so putting a little bit of speed bumps in the way helps to get your readers to like hang out with your characters a bit. Okay, and then as I mentioned, I think this would be hilarious if Simon had dressed down a little bit, because I think he's the only one in sort of business casual attire. Everyone else is kind of just in street clothes. So it'd be hilarious if he has his actual Lucky t-shirt on here. And there's one that I've been saving for a while, and I won't say what the t-shirt says now. I want it to be a surprise. But this will be his favorite t-shirt that fortunately hasn't gotten showered with demon guts. I was actually, in the episode right before this, I was going to do kind of a little running gag where after Isaac destroys the demon, Simon gets showered with demon guts again. But I was like, no, that's too much of a visual gag. It'll break the mood. So yeah, and Simon has his piece of pie here. Do do do. Okay, actually, let's move it closer here, because you don't hold pie out. You don't extend pie out in front of you when you're eating it. You kind of bring it close into your body. So he's holding it up here, and then is Simon a dessert person? Not really. I think he doesn't like spicy stuff, but I don't think he likes overly sweet stuff either. So I'm just deciding on whether he actually should have taken a bite of this pie yet. Nah, let's just say he's just stabbing it. Okay. Anyway, that's not important. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Depends on how much you like pie. Okay, so they're talking. There could be more shots of parts of the room or other indications that they're they're celebrating their victory here. I'll probably, when I do my second pass, I'll probably add a bunch of panels here as well. But what I'm really concerned with is just making sure again that I hit all those beats that I laid out in the early script. And then I'll fill in kind of all the in-betweens when I do my passes over and over again. Okay, but this is the part where Isaac will take the contract, deciding whether he's gonna take it back down to the basement. So this is where I'm like, would they come up from the basement and then he would go back down to the basement? Does it make sense that he would do that? But he did get them refreshments, so he had to go prepare stuff. So yeah, I think it would be fine for him to come back up and then go back down. I think that's fine. Trying to think what I would do if I were the host. Yeah, I think that's fine. But all this to say, I would like a shot of him looking at Haley and Simon in the distance, having a good time. So maybe something like the thinking chair is here. The little tray, and the two of them are talking in the background here, joking around. Oh yeah, Simon. Actually, I think Simon would be one of those people that would just be like, it's like leaning on the couch here, because he's fairly tall, or leaning on the top of this chair here, and then just looking really smug or smart, like that. Okay, but Isaac is in the back here, or I'm sorry, in the front here, looking on creepily like he usually does. Oh man, sometimes I get distracted with trying to draw out the rest of the scene. So there's a desk here. I think I'm trying to remember if there's like another sort of bureau. It's like antique bureau here. And then the door to the front of the shop is here. And then he's got photographs all over the place of different errors and of the different people that he's met throughout his life. Okay, and then there's this god-awful rug. There, so he's looking on. And then I'll do a shot with him holding the necklace and then heading down the stairs. And then there's a window in the back, which maybe that's the window that he sees his host staring out, because in one of the earlier episodes we had that same demon Yigoth, and he's sort of like pulling on this grate in an alley trying to get in, and this lock is jiggling. So maybe I know what I'll do. I'll have one of the bookshelves on the side of the wall just get rattled. It's like bam, 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 and then I'll cut to the opposite side of that wall, and it'll be that demon again, and he's at that grate going rattle, 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 trying to get in. And then we'll have an expression on Isaac's face. Maybe he's just like smirking or something like that, or he could be looking worried. So that'll kind of cap off this whole sequence here. And then I can worry about how I want to introduce Haley's demon. So that will be a big deal, because we've been building up to the intro of this guy. He's been sending messengers to try to get Haley and get his eye back. Doesn't know that the eye is lost, but it's going to be a big moment, and he'll be something that definitely they're going to have to tackle really soon. So I think this will be a good place to stop for now. I'm going to probably get something to eat, and then we'll pick it up again with part 2. So I'm hoping that the thumbnails will be finished, at least the first pass of thumbnails, and then I'll show you guys how I then chop this up and prep it to start doing pencils and inks. All right. Yeah, so we'll end it here, but I want to thank you guys again for sticking around and watching me and my thought process, some of my ramblings and my little rant in the middle there. But I hope you guys had a good time, and I will see you for part 2, which I'm sorry for the last minute notice. I'll try to give at least a day shout out before I schedule the live stream. And then by that time, I promise you I will have the chat enabled. All right, so see you guys later, and have a good night.